There's something about helping others where you discover the health that's inside of you. You actually get your own breakthrough. And it was in helping others get waves in a time when I was struggling with PTSD that it was something that brought joy. It got my eyes off of myself as I was doing so much therapy, that it was in serving others and seeing others with circumstances that they can't get out in these waves unless they have assistance. Way behind me, that isn't Doheny, where I'm not going to take Steve out. I'm not going to take special needs out on a wave that has this. It's called this waves of consequence. Okay. Waves of consequence. So you wipe out. I've hit my head on the reef.
Exciting today because we have an amazing chat coming up, and he's a friend of mine. Him and his wife, I've known them for several years, probably almost a decade by now. We met back in the day in Los Angeles, California, at a leaders networking sort of 3-day experience that we used to go to every year. And we just love him and his wife, Chad and Julia Dedmon. So I'm going to read a little bit of his bio to intro him, and then we'll bring him on to give you a little bit of a glimpse into what God is doing in a supernatural way through his leadership. And so Chad and his wife, Julia, are ordained through Bethel Church and Iris Global, Heidi and Roland Baker, for those of you who know who they are. And I've enjoyed ministering together to over 35 nations since 2006. Chad enjoys speaking, demonstrating the healing power of God, and activating the church to step into its full potential. Chad has worked as a young adult and youth pastor at the Vineyard Church in Laguna Niguel, California, and has served as an alumni ordination and BSSM pastor at Bethel Church. He has a heart to see the church operate in the fullness of abundance, seeing love, miracles, and healing displayed in the corporate body of Christ. Chad and Julia are currently leading Encountering Jesus Ministries and Catch the Wave, which focuses primarily on equipping the church in prayer and evangelism. So, Chad Dedmon, welcome to the Supernatural Leadership Podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing good, buddy. Here we go. Let's do it.
Been awesome to just catch up a little bit before we dove into this. And yeah, I remember meeting you back in the day and just thinking that you were like a really different breed of a leader, man. Just really respected what was on your life. And I think 2012, we probably first met, somewhere in there. So yeah, basically 10 years ago. And it's been a great journey, and just getting to even watch a little bit of your journey from afar. I know that we're pretty far away from each other geographically, but I love hearing what God is doing, man. And I want to dive into something very different that you have your hands connected to. I want to call this episode actually Supernatural Surfing for everyone out there, because you have an initiative that you are doing called Catch the Wave, and it came from a dream in January 2021 in the middle of a pandemic. But before you share the dream, tell us what Catch the Wave is, and then bring us on the journey of how you kind of started this whole thing.
Yeah. So, Catch the Wave started in 2018, and it's just about this place. Like, we do Catch the Wave beach parties. We do Catch the Wave wow services, which is worship on water. We do beach cleanups, and which is pretty amazing. And then we also do special needs surf camps. And but 2021 in January, it was a pretty crazy time. And California really went through it. For 40 days, our beaches were closed, meaning that, I have several friends that got fined $1,000 for surfing by themselves, and,
wow.
And, you know what I mean?
They were in the water.
It felt like when COVID, people started taking crazy pills. So in the surfing community, we have this Instagram account called Kook Slams. And Kook Slam shows when the pandemic started in March of 2020, these Costa Rican police officers were trying to get surfers out the water, and they were shooting live rounds of bullets, telling them to get out of the water, which is like the picture of irony. You know what I mean? Like, get out of the water, we're going to shoot at you. It's not safe to go surfing. But with that in mind, I just feel like there's such a time to bring the God of hope. And I had been asking God, what am I supposed to do in these times, during this pandemic? And I have this dream Where I'm stand-up paddleboarding, I'm not a huge stand-up paddleboard guy. I'm a surfer. I've surfed my whole life in California. I've been able to surf in over 20 countries. And so that to be said, I wasn't on a surfboard. I was on a paddleboard in this dream. And I was paddleboarding the Huntington Beach Pier where I was born and raised. And I saw this angel, and this angel put down this gold net into the water, into the ocean floor, and he started going south. And I felt like I was supposed to follow him. And I kept on following him down south all the way to San Clemente Pier, which would be the whole boundary line of Orange County. And it was 37 miles. And I heard the voice of God say, intercede. So I put my paddle down, I put my hands up, start praying for California, praying for America, praying for Canada, praying for, just the surrounding countries to just get rocked by the God of hope. And I have my hands up and I see this cloud, like the size of a man's hand, getting, far out in the ocean. And I actually saw like lightning bolts, like flashes of light, and really reminded me at Bethel Church in 2011 and 12, we had like the glory cloud, and we would have like Friday nights at 11 o'clock at night, this cloud would show up, but it looked like there was fireworks going off in the cloud, and there was like flashes of light. And it reminded me of, in this dream, reminded me of what I saw in 2011 in the worship time. And this cloud got to me and came over San Clemente, then came over Orange County, then came over California, then went all through America, all the way through North America, all the way to South America. And I woke up from the dream and I heard the voice of God say February 2nd through the 6th. And I knew that it meant I need to do this. And this was January 10th that I had the dream. And this is 3 weeks. Ended up documenting the whole experience. Where, I was a rookie. I didn't know what I was doing. Like my first episode, my first prayer paddle, my first day, I went out in board shorts and a sweater and a beanie. That was a really bad move. February 2nd, the water is 57 degrees Fahrenheit.
57
the
degrees.
temperature
Wow.
is only like 50 degrees. We fell in, we were used paddleboards we'd never used before. Again, I'd never gone over a mile. And I set out to do this crazy adventure, not knowing what to expect. And it was incredible. It was an incredible experience, but it was definitely hard. I think the first day, I had a lifeguard with me and another buddy who's a really amazing waterman. So we all had boards that we had never used before. They were like 14 feet and they're like really good for like the lake or like still water, and not for the ocean. And we had crazy wind swells, and we had wind come up. We probably fell at least 40 times each. So not only are you paddling 8 miles, because that was our first day, we did 37 in like 4 days, but we did 8 miles that first day, and we were so sore. And we began to like actually like this deal of, we celebrated one another, where we would just be like, hey, you know what? Like, we started declaring there's a new baptism. And it was like, and God talked to me afterwards and said, it's a baptism of risk, that it's stepping out of the boat like Peter. And Peter fell, after he took his eyes off of Jesus, but he learned a valuable lesson that the other 11 disciples didn't get to learn. And there's something about when you fail, you begin to redefine what success is, that hopefully
Good.
through, what we call failing, you learn a valuable lesson and you gain wisdom. And then, you begin to you don't make those same mistakes. And so it's so important to be taking risk. And that was a big thing of what I was doing, was a risk. It was unknown. I didn't know what to expect. I was completely sore. There was times when I thought I wasn't going to make it, and ended up completing it. And that was in February of 21. And I've ended up paddling since then over 300 miles. And it's been incredible. And I've seen great white sharks. I've seen shipwrecks. I've seen, swam with dolphins, turtles, all kinds of humpback whales. In this last February, I did my first island to island paddle in Hawaii from Maui to Molokini, where I saw probably 70 humpback whales, and swam with a whale, which was pretty cool. But anyways, yeah, it's an
just so I understand, like when you say paddle boarding, like you're standing up paddle boarding?
Yep, stand up paddle.
That's hard. I mean, I've done that on a lake.
Yeah,
where the waves are like small. I don't even know how that's possible. Like that's crazy.
Yeah,
You must
definitely.
be ripped. Your core must be just ripped because it's all the stabilizer muscles. You're like
Yeah.
balancing the entire time. Like,
Yeah, you are very, very sore. My biggest paddle open water has been 19 miles. That was a pretty big one. Then I've done some river paddles where I've done 40 miles. And the river flow is like, 3 miles an hour, 2 miles an hour. So it's
and
a
the
good
thing is,
assist.
you can't just quit halfway because you're in the middle of the water. I mean, unless you have a
Oh,
boat following you, you can't
yeah.
just
No,
give
no.
up. So you got to
Yeah.
make it through this thing.
Yeah, the furthest out from land I was at that paddle was a 12 and a half mile paddle from island to island, so 6 miles out to sea. Where if something goes wrong, equipment failure, broken paddle, you just got to adapt. You got to pivot. You got to know what you're doing. Obviously, I have communications. I could radio or I can use my phone, but yeah, I mean, you might not have anybody come and get you for a couple, hours. And then, you got to know your currents and all that fun stuff. So yes, it
It
is.
sounds
It's
like
an
it sounds like a good
adventure.
script for like a potential horror movie. You get stuck out on the water in the middle of like 70 humpback whales. The sharks come. You got the it sounds like the makings of a potential horror movie. Paddler goes out there, gets lost at sea. Not gonna happen in Jesus' name to you, but
No,
hey,
no,
that's
no.
awesome. Tell us about the surfing side of the initiative and bring us into some of the impact that you are having now with what I believe is such a very creative way of, like you said, stepping out of the boat, doing something different, taking risks, but ultimately not just for your own kicks, because you want to see the kingdom advance, you want to see supernatural impact happen. So bring us on a little bit of a journey of
Yeah.
going into your story with the surfing side of it and how that's impacting the world around you.
Yeah, I mean, going into the surfing side, first off, I started doing these special needs surf camps, but it was actually I started really doing them after killing PTSD. I was in a severe car accident in 2018 in October. I rolled my forerunner 5 times, was ejected through the sunroof. Had a pretty gnarly head injury. Was sensitive to light for months. Claustrophobia,
I
which never.
remember because you posted that.
Yeah,
You like did a selfie or something. You got out. I remember that. That was a bloody post, man.
it
That was a
was. It
bloody
was.
post.
And I mean, the doctor's telling me 73% of those that get ejected from the sunroof end in a fatality. Had a
Wow.
3 month old. I had a 3 month old and a 3 year old at the time. So it was just like it was a pretty good shocker. Ended up, taking a sabbatical, not being in ministry, not getting paid to do ministry, started selling solar. And I was selling solar when I helped out a buddy at a special needs surf camp. And I was taking this little boy who was 2 years old with Down syndrome, and he kept on. Just find this little ripple, probably this wave that was like 8 inches, and I would just take him on this big giant board and just push him into this little tiny wave. Could probably go like 30 meters, and then he would just be doing this, which means more, just one more. And then
Wow.
probably did that for 2 hours, where I took him out and had at least 40 or 50 waves with him, and I'm
Wow.
just started crying tears of joy of just like this is ministry, this is what I want to
Wow.
do, this is like if I could choose between speaking at conferences or taking out this 2 year old with Down syndrome. I took out this one kid, Joey, who was 15 years old, born blind. And so we had a system where I got to take him surfing, and then I would just yell, like jump off right before we hit the beach, so that he doesn't know when the beach is coming. So then I was able to, I was on the surfboard with him, and I'd verbally say, jump off, and just to help people get into the waves. And I think when you're dealing with trauma, like I was, that it was a place of healing where we begin to, especially in our age, and I'm 40, and so they call me a tweener, which I guess I'm like in between the Gen Xers and the millennials. But this whole movement of take care of your heart, take care, the self-care, all that stuff, love yourself, and I love it, the wholehearted living. But there's something about helping others where you discover the health that's inside of you. You
Wow.
actually get your own breakthrough. And it was in helping others get waves in a time when I was struggling with PTSD, that it was something that brought joy. It got my eyes off of myself, as I was doing so much therapy, that that it was in serving others and seeing others with circumstances that they can't get out in these waves unless they have assistance. And you get to help them, and that joy, that overcoming, it just is contagious. And it really was, I'd start doing that for selfish reasons, because it would just be tears of joy every single time. And yeah, so that's kind of where it all started. And that is a big initiative. When I do these prayer paddles, I'm not just doing the paddle, and I'm not just like taking the ground and praying, that I want to go and help out the community. So I've done special needs surf camps all along the coast of California. I've taken out probably over 200 kids so far. But then there's the other stuff is 2018, we did our first conference for Catch the Wave. And this lady came and she got rocked by God. And I was in my accident 3 months later. And then she contacted my wife, Julia, who's a realtor, and said, hey, I want to buy a house up in Redding. I saw you guys in Orange County. I heard the voice of God for the first time, and I want to buy a house with you. And then I want to take you guys out to dinner. Wow. So this is December of 2018. I have my brain thing. I can't barely, be in light. I have this crazy migraine. I'm having night terrors. If I jump on an airplane, I get claustrophobic, or I get into a car, I get claustrophobic. Just really, really, obviously my cortisol levels are jacked. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to meet with Julia. And she says, when you were speaking, I had this open vision and heard God say, this man will take your husband surfing. And so she starts telling us her story, that her husband was riding his mountain bike. He's a land developer, he's a realtor. And he's riding his mountain bike on Super Bowl Sunday. And it's 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and a drunk driver in a big raised truck hits him, and then it's a hit and run. He takes off. The police end up finding him hours later, but the husband is not a quadriplegic. It's a brain injury, so his brain does not fire. So he will have movement, but it'll be involuntary. He can't talk. He can't, he can't communicate. She just gave birth to their 5th son. Wow. He's 3 months old. So he's a big surfer guy. They did surf missions in Nicaragua, in Mexico. And so she tells me, God spoke to me and said, you'll take him out surfing. And I'm like, I can't take him out surfing. Look where I'm at. I can't take him. And then there's this thing in me of well, I could have been in this guy's situation. And so that whole deal of, wow, do unto others as you would have them do to you. This thing in me of well, if I'm still breathing, I hope I have friends that will strap me to a surfboard, because I'm still alive and I'm still a surfer. So throw me in the waves. And so I look at her and I say, when I am better, I will take him surfing. So I go through, my journey of killing PTSD, discover all the different stuff of art therapy and, various different things. And God gives us many arrows to kill trauma and actually not be stuck in your pain, be present in your pain, but then find God there, and then find, that you begin to move forward, and you begin to have scars that are great. And so anyways, August 2019, I just it just all worked out for me to take him surfing. I ended up taking him surfing, got 3 waves. And, this guy, if he falls in, he might die. So do not wipe out. First of all, and, but I feel pretty confident.
So when you take somebody surfing, or someone like this, are you holding the board? How does this even look? Give us the image of what this
so
looks
we
like.
have this big giant surfboard that you could fit 6 people on. Okay. So we have him and his wife, which she said is a crazier miracle to get her out in the water, but she's his primary caretaker. So she's going to know how he's doing. So I really wanted her to be there. So she would hold him up, because he can't, he can't hold himself up. So we put a life vest on him, I've got a lifeguard with me. I've got lifeguard training. We know what to do, but if we wipe out, he doesn't know to spit out the water. It's just going to go into his lungs. So we have to have a whole procedure of how we're going to take care of it if we do wipe out. And by the way, the greatest surfer of all time, which would be Kelly Slater, who won Pipeline at 50 years old, which is a crazy deal. He's fallen. I've surfed with Kelly Slater. I've seen him fall. You know what I mean? Michael Jordan misses shots. Like,
Right.
meaning that
Yeah.
you do wipe out when you go surfing. It's a huge risk. And I'm like, all right, but like we have set him up for success. He ends up getting 3 waves. It's amazing. I mean, his family was like super nervous. His brother like took me aside and said, I don't think this is he could die. And I'm like, bro, like we're taking him out surfing. We're making the right precautions. Like this is going to be successful. So we get him in the van, they leave, and I suddenly I get this like remembrance of the dinner that we had in December where I'm shot. There's no
You've
way.
forgotten about it. Crazy.
I forgot about it, where I
Wow.
said, when I am better. I didn't realize that, like, I remembered, oh my gosh, I told her when I am better, I will take him surfing. So I just had this like self-realization moment when they're like leaving. I look in the parking lot on the ground, I'm going, I guess I'm better. So
wow,
yeah, I mean,
so
like,
cool.
Oh, bro, like, so to further that story, that's Steve and Lori. Something happened to me where I had an encounter with the father. And there's thing in me of like, man, he's a dad. Like every dad should have rites of passages with their kids, hiking, fishing, surfing, horseback riding, whatever. And like, I'm like, he's a dad and he hasn't taken his two youngest out surfing. And I'm like, on Father's Day, 2021, I took him out with his 5 sons and his wife,
Wow.
family of 7, out surfing.
This is the second time now. You took the
This is
first
the second time.
Okay.
Did
he wipe out the first time? Did he wipe out?
No.
No. Okay.
And we almost wiped out the second round. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we almost wiped out, but we made it. I mean, when you got like 5, there was a family of 7, and then me and my buddy Dana, who's a lot smaller than me, but we almost went over the falls. But it's pretty crazy to just watch like the community, like the surf culture is pretty tight knit. We're not like we're pretty exclusive in some ways. Like, we've got Instagram like accounts called Kook Slams and Kook of the Day, because we're outing people that don't belong to our tribe pretty much. But we paddle out, and I was with a buddy who's like a Navy SEAL, and I tell him, he's got a really loud voice, and I go, hey, tell everyone out in the lineup what we're doing. So this is Father's Day at Doheny in Southern California. There's probably 100 people in the lineup that's catching this one wave that breaks off this rock, and there's like 100 people. I mean, it's Father's Day. So my buddy screams out, hey everyone, this is Steve. We're going to get waves, party waves with his family, with his sons. Just, and like he makes his announcement, and everyone, like people started clapping. 3 people came and paddled over to me and said, can we pray for him? And we're like, we didn't even tell people we're Christians or anything. I'm like, yeah, pray for him. Yes. Yeah. And then, but every time we would catch a wave, the whole lineup would clap and cheer.
Wow. That's amazing.
Like, it was crazy to see the surf community rally, say, hey, no, we're going to help this guy catch some waves.
Because everyone knew this was different. Everyone knew this was like a different moment.
Well, surfing is very selfish. Like usually you see one surfer per one wave. So like to have the whole community say, nah, we're not playing that game right now. We are celebrating. We're coming together as a community. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what the deal is with this pandemic that I feel like has been, like we've discovered so much from psychology about isolation and quarantining and, like, and just, man, the power of community, where everyone is celebrating and assisting. We're all a part of this, the success of him surfing with his kids. And it was pretty phenomenal. So that's
amazing.
Like the story.
So I got to ask, this is totally
story.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
This last section is he graduated. He passed away October 2021. Wow. And I think that's so big, like, you know what I mean? Like there's such a thing as leadership. And one of the things that will be a voice in your head at times, especially when you're taking big risk, is you're not ready. You're not ready. You don't have it all lined up. You don't have all the money. You don't have all the backing. You don't have like, you know what I mean? Like I had the dream January 10th. I mean, so I had to go buy a drone. I had to put that on my credit card. I had to go buy, like the Lord's like, document this. And I'm like, all right, God, like, I'm going to go document this. What does that look like? Stewarding. What does that look like? Oh my God, it's 3 weeks away. I haven't trained. I've got holiday weight. Like what? Like I'm not, no, let's do this in the summer. Let's do this when it's warm. Let's do this. I live in Reading. It takes me 10 hours to drive to do this thing. You know what I mean? Like, So yeah, circumstances aren't always going to line up. It's not going to always be like the perfect, and also I'm not ready. No, I need to do this first. I need to get this lined up. Maybe I need to partner with this person. And the big thing is just to go for it, to notice when you hear that. Sometimes it's intimidation, it's fear, and it paralyzes you. And it's like, no, I'm going forward. And there's something about seizing the day. There's something about like, okay, I'm not fully ready, but I'm going to get ready in the process. And then Steve, I took him out twice. I got to take him out. Like, think about that. His two youngest sons now could forever say, I went surfing with my dad.
Wow.
And I think that's special.
Powerful.
That's something like worth going after. And we only have certain moments. I mean, he's graduated. I don't have that as a possibility. I don't have that, I can't take Steve out with his boys anymore.
Yeah.
So anyways, that got a little intense, but
that's powerful, man. So many people wait until they feel they're ready. But unfortunately, when it comes to the supernatural side of taking risks, when you include God in your life, he's going to always ask you to do things when you're not ready, but he's ready for you to take that step. And because you did that and you're doing it in such a creative way, like I don't think I've ever had a conversation with somebody that's doing something quite like this. And I think you have to be able to take a risk to do something that's so outside of, like, there's no paradigm for it. Like you can't reference a list of these ministries that are doing the exact same thing the exact same way, and so you have to go almost cold turkey. You have to go without a paradigm or a framework and just trust God in the process. And as you do that, and this is what supernatural leadership is all about, is simply being led by the Spirit. And we're only led by the Spirit when it makes no sense. If it makes sense, I would question if it's God, because the majority of the time that God calls us to do anything, it makes no sense to our logic. And he gives us a peace, the Bible says, that surpasses our understanding. It goes beyond our ability to reason what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. And so this is what you're doing, and this is how it's impacting the world around you. And I love this. The question I was going to ask you, then you dropped that like heavy at the end. I'm like, oh, I don't want to go back there right away. But with the guy dying, which is unfortunate, but you had that opportunity to really minister to him. But I was going to ask you, define, just this is like a side, derailed moment here. Define what a wipeout is in surfing language. Like I'm thinking like you fall off your board into the water. Are you being sucked underneath like the
bro?
Undertow? Like what's a wipeout?
Kinds of different wipeouts. Like the way behind me, that isn't Doheny, where I'm not going to take Steve out. I'm not going to take special needs out on a wave that has this. It's called this waves of consequence.
Okay.
Waves of consequence. So you wipe out. I've hit my head on the reef. There's been so many different wipeouts. I've had the leash wrap around me where I can't swim.
Whoa. What do you mean? What do you mean a leash wrap around you?
A leash? Yeah, a leash. That's going to be, there's my
a leash.
surfboard.
I heard a leach. Okay, a leash. A leash.
Yeah, so there's going to be a leash attached to the tail of the board to my ankle.
Yeah.
And that leash is, it's like a rope, and it wrapped around my arms. And I was surfing in Hawaii, and I couldn't swim with my arm. I only could kick. I've gotten stuck in the reef before where your leash will get stuck under the reef. And so you can't get up to the surface, and you got to swim back down and
so
get
what do you
the
do
reef
in that
out.
Oh man.
So and then there's that's a wipeout that I have. There's a scar right there. I don't know if you can see it there, but it was Fiji, and the board hit me in the face, and I was bleeding, and a 12-foot tiger shark chased me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy deal.
Man, like, okay, so question, when you watch that movie Soul Surfer, that surfer who lost her
Bethany
arm.
Hamilton, I've surfed with her a bunch of times. Yeah, she's awesome.
Crazy. Yeah. So like, this stuff is like, have you ever been close to like a shark? Other than that moment.
Oh yeah, that was the closest. Because I'm bleeding, so I'm giving the shark, intel that take me, And so, no, there's been a couple of close, like in South Africa, I saw two great whites. Those are, but tiger sharks are different. Tigers and bull sharks are the most aggressive sharks out there. So I feel more comfortable with a great white than a tiger. I'll tell you that. Like, and so that was a tiger shark in Fiji and Indonesia. There was a tiger shark that took a turtle right next to me.
Oh
Turtles are their
man.
favorite foods. They love turtles. Yeah, to the sound of the shell and the teeth, him breaking up the shell, it sounded like a car being crushed.
Oh my
So yeah, we
gosh.
got out of the water, but my other buddy stayed in the water going, I think he's full. And I'm like, no, that turtle wasn't big enough to make him
Wow. So
full.
what's the
But
biggest wave you've ever surfed on?
oh, 20 foot plus, but I've been out in 35-foot waves. And that's to be out there is an accomplishment. Waimea Bay, I got to, yeah, there's a lot of surfing stuff that we could go into, but yeah, 35 foot and the whole ocean rises. And if you have a cleanup set, and so that's the more craziness is when you see a 35-foot wave break in front of you. It's
Man.
pretty, it's, you have to stay calm. You really learn about breath, which is so amazing to learn about breath. And but yeah, staying calm is the biggest. You got to stay relaxed. If you restrict, you lose 30% of oxygen. If you're constricting, you're tightening up, and so anyways, yeah, we could go into all the surfing
Man,
stuff.
well, I think about surfing as like you probably have so many sermon message illustrations from surfing. I mean, you talk
Yeah,
about you said this one statement about the wave behind you. I know most people listening, unless they're watching, won't see it, but it's a pretty big wave, and you called it a wave of consequence.
yeah,
And isn't that such like a an illustration for life? There are the waves of no consequence. There are the easy things that we do and that we kind of let kind of move us out or move us towards the things that we're moving towards. And there are the waves that if we take them, we're taking a risk. And this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about risks. We're talking about taking a step of faith when it makes no sense. And I think that, God is always giving us an opportunity in our supernatural leadership journey to take these waves of consequence that, hey,
yes,
it's going to be risky. You might fall off your board. You might get taken out. There might be some sharks. You might see some stuff causes you to lose stability, get in your head a little bit. But if you trust God in the journey, he'll take you in and he'll protect
mhm,
you. And even if you do fall off, he's so good, just like Peter, he'll pick us up. And
yeah.
you and your dad wrote a book recently called The Risk Factor. Tell us about that book. And I think that in light of this conversation, it really connects to what it is that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think too, like even just to hit on the surfing thing, and I'll hit on the risk factor is at the end of the day, I don't focus. I mean, sometimes I do focus on my wipeouts because they were so amazing, and it was an actual epic journey to wipe out and what happens. But I really, honestly, I'm thinking about all the waves that I made. You know what I mean? Like I'm not consumed with my wipeout or consumed with the failure. I'm consumed with the waves that I made, but it's that whole deal of opportunities of like I'm going to keep taking opportunities, and if I wipe out and I quit surfing, that would be a real bummer way to to quit as something that you love, where it's like no, I'm going to leave with a win. I'm going to leave with some success. And I think that's the big thing is with the risk factor is really redefining what success is. That just getting out there, or maybe you fell 10 times but you got up that once, like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so important. Yeah, the risk factor, that was our goal. It's something that me and my dad have done. We've cultivated a lifestyle of risk. John Wimber, we grew up in the vineyard movement. My parents were pastors with John in the late 80s and early 90s. And John Wimber would spell faith RISK. And so it's so important for us to take risks, that we discover God, we discover ourselves. And I think it's a real big difference of condemnation and spirit-led living. Like I remember, me becoming a public speaker in my early 20s, and I remember laying in my bed and I would have like a third party, me and the Holy Spirit would be, and then I would start getting revelation. I'd like, I'll get words of knowledge, stuff that I didn't get during the meeting. And I would be like, oh man, I missed it. Like I missed it. And the Holy Spirit's like, no, I'm trying to teach you how to grow and how to, that this is, you're becoming better, more and more aware, and how to be led by my spirit, that this is a teaching moment, and condemnation shuts that stuff down. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like the
Yeah.
gift of healing. Oh, I prayed for that guy with an ankle and he didn't get healed. I guess I don't have it. It's like there's something about you know what, I'm going to be tenacious. I'm going to keep on going. And, and so I think, that is the big one, is right where your mind is at, where the mindset of, no, I'm more than a conqueror. Like this is what I do, and then you begin to borrow other people's breakthrough. You know what I mean? And that's a Roger Bannister principle that scientists and doctors and everyone in the up to the early 1900s said, you can't break a 4-minute mile. Then Roger Bannister does, and then 40 days later or something like that, the next guy breaks it, and now it's a normal. And I think for us to understand, us as leaders, we are going to take risks. Us as leaders are going to go places that no one else has gone before. Usually leaders are forerunners. Usually leaders, are pioneers. And being a pioneer myself in my industry is that it's about learning how to take risk and how to take it the right way, and how to learn from it, how to grow from it, but also to not play it safe, because God's presence is the most comfortable place, but it's not supposed to be the most safe place. I mean, it's not supposed to be the most comfortable place, but it's supposed to be the most safe place. So I think that's the biggest one, is just embracing when you think that you failed, you start having eyes to see, no, where's the win in this?
And you probably feel like a measure of risk every single time you go into the water. I'm assuming like there is probably, some days where the waves are really big and you're thinking, okay, this is a little bit more risky. Some days you're probably like, there's a level of risk, but hey, I'm probably pretty good.
I think when we talk about waves of consequence, when I draw back into my preparation of like, okay, am I prepared for this? Have I trained for this? Am I prepared? And that gives me confidence. That gives me like, no, I belong here. I belong in waves of consequence. Good. Because waves of consequence will be some of the greatest waves you'll ever catch. And then it's the focus. That mental fortitude is so critical in waves of consequence, because when I'm surfing Doheny, when I'm surfing waves that are 6 foot or smaller, I'm usually, that's when a lot of surfers, really good surfers, get injured, because they're not focused. They're not thinking this is a wave of consequence. And so it's so important to bring your mental fortitude and your focus, and that's a big one. And then also your knowledge, like your wave knowledge and your respect of the ocean. You're not there to conquer the ocean. You're there to be, you're not in tension. You're not fighting, you're not battling. And it's that place of flow, to learn how to flow, to learn to know what the ocean is doing, and to actually use that as your advantage. Meaning there's rips, there's all kinds of things. So there's a lot of different things that I can talk about with the ocean.
That's a message right there, man. You just gave us a 3-point message right there. Give us, as we close here, give us from those takeaways that you just mentioned, give us, the listeners, a practical activation on how we can approach risks in this next season. Could be like a 21-day thing, 7-day thing, a 3-day thing. Give us something that we can do in this next season to approach our own waves of consequence with confidence.
Yeah, I think that what the challenge that I would bring up is, why don't you think of, in your business or whatever you want to apply it, how do I take risk? And that you would begin to connect to what that is. For example, one of my junior high kids, I was a junior high pastor, and one of them said, you know what, we've seen cancer healed. We've seen, because success is going to be different from everyone else, and so we've seen all this, but we haven't walked on water yet. And Jesus did walk on water. And he said, those that believe in me will do the same works as I do. And I'm like, game on. So I provided them a pool at my parents' house. We were on a trip, and they fell in the water like 3 times. And then we did this beach baptism back down in Southern California. And one of the kids walked on water, which was so amazing. But
wow.
But
okay. So qualify that. Okay, wait. So that
you
just qualified. You said something like that's totally out of the box. Qualify that. He walked on water. How did he walk on water?
Yeah. So we did a beach baptism. These two kids were trying to walk on water up in Redding. We did a youth conference. And so they would fall in, and I wasn't going to say anything to the youth group. I didn't want to put any outside pressure on them. I didn't want to make like a big thing of it. Like, they're on their journey. I'm going to celebrate them. And so for 3 nights, and now everyone's kind of catching on, you know what I mean? As the washer and dryer goes on in the night and all that fun stuff. And so, so I made it a point. Hey, in our our youth group, we celebrate risk taking. So we gathered around them, we prayed for them, and we just declared, you're not a failure. Like you're maybe it'll be the next time you attempt it. Maybe it's the next time, and just that support, that lends encouragement, should give people courage. And so we went down and drove back down to Southern California. The next day was a beach baptism. So the 40 youth that were there, they said, hey, you two have been contending, let's contend together. So all hold hands. They all walk out into the ocean. They all get about chest to shoulder deep. And they realize that one of the kids is still on top of the water, still walking.
What?
On top.
That's crazy. See, this should have been in the beginning of the conversation. Now we just dropped this like wild story.
So yeah, this is actually in the book, The Risk Factor,
That's
where
awesome.
I talk about my junior high kids.
Wow.
But it's so important. And I just want to tell everyone, like, why don't you take, this just do it. You take 21 days, but you first have to connect the dots of what is the risk? What is success look like? Yeah. And then you begin to tackle it where you are giving those 21 days of, okay, I know what success looks like. I know what risk looks like. I'm going to begin to engage in my everyday for the next 21 days, making practical ways, like just giving opportunities and having that way of thinking. This is like the evangelist in me, but having that way of thinking of, okay, I'm making opportunities of how do I see success in this place of risk?
Yeah. And ultimately, I mean, like, and you said this at the beginning before we even talked on the episode, that like everything in the end, the success of risk always looks like birthed out of the right place. Like if God is leading us to something that feels risky, we know there will be a success no matter what, and a significance that comes with that. Sometimes we take risks because we just want to. It's like, I'm going to go buy a Rolls Royce by faith, and like it doesn't work the same way.
No.
But when we're led and something is birthed from the right place, if God is bringing us on a journey, then we can trust that in those risks, we will win at some capacity. That's powerful, man. Thank you so much for chatting. This has been a really interesting conversation. And I want to encourage all the listeners out there to practically apply some of what Chad has just talked about, some of the activation he just gave you. Take those to heart and watch them impact your leadership and business and whatever sphere that you are connected to right now. Spirit-led risks will always bring incredible fruit. And so don't forget, get Chad's book, The Risk Factor. We'll put the information in the description below. And how do they connect with you? How do they connect with what you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, you can follow us on Instagram, social media, Catch the Wave, catchthewaveglobal.org is our website. Just come and come with us. Come on a prayer paddle with us.
Awesome. You got to come teach some surfing in cold Canada.
Oh, would be my privilege. Yeah, Nova Scotia, British Columbia. Let's go.
I've only surfed, I think once in my life, and it was in Mexico, and I got major, burn. What do you call the burn? The rash.
You got a rash on the chest.
Major rash. I couldn't put I had to walk around with my arms up all day. It like hurt so bad. No one told me to wear like a rash guard or anything. I had no idea.
Where in Mexico were you?
It was 2004. It was a beach in Mexico. I was on a missions trip actually, and we had an afternoon off. And I can't remember what part of Mexico it was, but I could put my arms down.
Remember that feeling. I'll make sure that you never have that again.
Yeah. But then I remember when I lived in Alaska, I lived on the coast of Alaska, and it was cold, especially in the winter when I was there. And there were people surfing like every morning in wetsuits.
There's actually good waves in Alaska.
Crazy. Yeah. And I was like, man, this is nuts. And it was like cold, dark, and people are out there surfing. And I lived in Halibut Cove, which is like halibut capital of the world. And, not necessarily a big open space, but they were catching pretty big waves. And it was always intriguing for me to watch. And so, but thank you so much, Chad. Really appreciate your time. And I want to encourage everyone out there, like I said, get his book, The Risk Factor. Check out the info in the description. Follow Chad. And I know that, what he's doing will have some awesome impact in your leadership journey. Remember, everyone has a leader within. So let's make that leader a little more supernatural. We'll see you next time.